Hello everyone, I'm Rick Laza, public address announcer for the Ubly Bearcat varsity football team. Back in December, Paul Adams from the Huron County View Sports sat down for an exclusive one-on-one interview with former Ubly Bearcat head coach Bill Sweeney. Coach Sweeney amassed a record of 88 wins and 22 losses, and whether as an assistant coach or head coach, Herb Field has been his second home for nearly 2 decades. Along the way, he's collected league, district, and regional championships, but perhaps the pinnacle of his coaching career came in 2008 when he led the Bearcats to the Division VII state championship game. Sit back and enjoy this special video presentation as Bill Sweeney reflects on his years of coaching in the Bearcat football program.
So here it is. It's done.
It is done.
Your career is done. It's a stamp on it. The few numbers for you: 88 and 22. That's your overall record. 22 and 9 playoff record. 6 districts, 5 regionals, state runner-up. How do you put that all into perspective?
If you would have asked me when I was a 19-year-old kid when I started coaching that would be my career, I'd have told you nonsense. I mean, it's humbling. It really is. It's really humbling. And those were with me as a head coach, but the program, as a whole has just been, with Dave's group at 16, and being a part of that, and that one I could really sit back and watch, sit back and enjoy while they were doing it, because I was vested, but I wasn't the man. It's just humbling, and it's just a sense of pride to have that kind of success, and all the guys that have helped out along the way. It's like I said, you went back to the 19-year-old kid that started coaching. He would have just thought, not a chance, not a chance.
Did you think you'd be a head coach when you were 19?
I never wanted to. I never, it's amazing you asked that, because when Herb retired, they wanted me to take over, and I wouldn't take over. I just never had an aspiration to be a head coach. I loved being around football, because, what I loved about football all along was what it did for me as a kid. Just the camaraderie with the guys, and the feeling of belonging, and it was a sport that if you played hard and aggressive, and I was a really hard-nosed, hyper-aggressive kid, the more success you had, and I just loved that, and I had such passion for it, and I just liked being around it. I just liked being around it the whole time. I never wanted to be anything, but honestly, I look back at it, and even though I didn't want to be a head coach, all that years that I wasn't a head coach, there was a lot of bad teams in my early years being an assistant and that type of thing, but I was around good guys. You go back to Jerry Herb, I couldn't have learned under a better guy than that, and those were some lean years at Ubly, and but he just showed me how to do it the right way, and really helped to shape me, even though I didn't want to do it. Some of me feels like I was almost destined to do it, and how much football's been a part of my life, and being a head coach and being around it has been a part of my life. So, to think that I never really wanted to be one, but it's almost like, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I was almost like I was destined to do it. And I think it fit my personality. It fit how I am with the kids. I mean, being a coach was, if I would have been a farmer or a factory worker, it wouldn't have fit my personality as much as being a coach was.
Well, at heart, you're a teacher.
Oh yeah,
and when you're out there on the field, it's just an extension of what you do in the classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, it is. I had a guy tell me one time that great coaches can be great teachers, and there's always this stigma that coach all he cares about is the sport. They don't do, and I honestly believe good coaches are good teachers. They're good in every aspect. They may not be the most politically correct at times. They may not, but with a really, really good coach, I think the kids get the flaws and all, and it's real. And I think the best teachers are people that are real. I mean, they're real with the kids, and they feel vested in those kids, because you see maybe a kid that's got flaws, but you can see what they can become, and I really honestly believe that that probably the coaching picked me. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you think Jerry, Mr. Hurt, saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself, that you were eventually destined to be a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry and I were really the same. I looked up to that guy so much because, I did so much more with him other than football, We hunted together. He had a gravel pit. I worked there for 10 summers with him. I worked with him on the village before that, and I think he inherently saw that I had really good work ethic, and I've never been around a guy, I've told people this a million times, but the guy would be 65 years old, and he'd be working you under the table. I mean, the guy, the drive of that man was just, and I just, when I moved to this town and he took an interest in me, I just latched. I latched right, and I think that he was molding me. He always told me that. He always wanted me to do it, and somehow maybe I didn't have confidence enough in myself. Somehow I knew how much it entailed. I didn't want to pull the trigger, but when I did take the job, there was nobody more proud that I took it. And then when we started having success, I tell you what, man, there was not 1 ounce of jealousy in that man. That man was the most genuine man. He was the most genuine man, and enjoyed my success probably more than his own successes, that guy coming into my life was life-changing for me. It really was.
Do you regret not taking over directly for Jerry? It was 2 years, and then 2003 you took over. Is that, or do you think?
No, I don't regret it because everything happens for a reason, and I think that 2 years between that proved to myself that I needed to be doing it, and it proved to me that I could do it. Coming off of Jerry, it's tough to follow a legendary guy. That guy's all over town, played ball for, and a Hall of Famer, and one of the toughest guys that probably ever coached. I mean, just mentally, the toughest guy. And I don't regret it because I think it allowed me to assume the role in a much better capacity because I was ready to do it. I felt totally ready to do it, taking those 2 years where I don't think I would have been ready if I had followed him right away.
Let's go into that 2003 season. Your first year as a head coach. What were your realistic expectations? At that point, public football was not an established program as far as making deep runs and collecting districts and regionals. And, everything you guys did that year, that was new.
Yeah. We'd made the playoffs 2 years in a row coming out. They came up with a new playoff format. So, it almost gave kids new life. 6-3 was awesome then, right? And we went 6-3 and 7-2, won a game in the playoffs. But when I took over, that group of guys that were in that era, and I was a young guy, man, I spent probably more time with those kids, that group of kids. You go through 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2000, that stretch, man, in the weight room, I'd be working out with them. I did everything. We played basketball after weightlifting. We played basketball after football. So coming into it, I was really, really confident, that we were going to be good. Could I have envisioned going to the semifinals? No. There was no, you just didn't envision it. Good then was, and that's the difference in expectations. Man, if we go 7-2, make the playoffs, that is fantastic, right? But those guys are really the ones that laid the groundwork for those were the toughest, the biggest, the strongest. The teams we played back then, no offense to football today, but it's just not. I mean, every week was a huge game, man, and you were winning games 18-13, and you were losing games 14-12. I mean, it was a battle every week. But when you got into the playoffs, and luckily we would get in the playoffs, and you might play somebody from outside the area, and we were so battle tested and proven. But those guys, I still talk to this day. Some of them live around the Soul Boys. I just, I always love those guys. Those guys are going to be, I always said they're almost like, I always felt like they're my own kids, and and guys like Jamie Tibbetts, man, and then the Shane O'Connors and those guys. I did so much with those guys. I mean, it was just, I was with them every day, and I could keep up with them. That was the biggest thing, you know, Craig Leski, guys like that. They made this program, you know, and the guys before them, you know, the Eric Dukoskis and Ryan Clavans and Matt Walsh, just, they made this program, because that was right when we were getting a weight program too. You know, we just got a weight room. All those kids bought into it. And, you know, honestly, that 2003, it's really, really cool, because, you know, Aaron's been helping out, and he's our AD now, and there's every once in a while, you know, I just look over at him, and he's not the AD, and my buddy Aaron, it's, you know, we're on cars, he's still, man, that's the guy. You know, that was the quarterback. That was
Tell me a little bit about Aaron, too, before we get into more into 2003, but Aaron was special.
Aaron was just, well, he was the savior. I mean, that was the guy. I mean, it was the jock. But the thing about Aaron is he's such a level-headed dude. He was a level-headed kid, you know. And he's just, if you ever talk to Aaron and don't think he knows what he's talking about, you know, it just, when you talk to him, what's going on in his mind is so level-headed and so dead on to what he sees. You know, he's one of those guys that sees reality. He sees real. And as a player, he was like that. As a guy that worked hard, he was like that. And then bringing him into this program in the school, I mean, I just love it. I mean, I just love that dude. I mean, he's just so level-headed. You know, he's one of those guys that plays off me because I'm very hyper and spastic, and you know, I can go off the wall at any point. That's my personality. I get it. I warts and all. But Aaron is just like that, total level-headed, just plays off that. I mean, it's just such a nice thing to have.
He quarterback like that too?
Absolutely. As a quarterback, he was an awesome quarterback. He's the only guy I ever had throw for over 1,000 yards. And I mean, and I think he threw for about 1,200 or 1,300. But as a quarterback, he just saw things, his vision. That's what I mean. Everything, he's just so level-headed. And when he played, everything was just so level. Nothing was ever too high or too low to that guy. He was just always on the plane. He's one of the best players we've ever had, and one of the best athletes we've ever had. And it wasn't just his athletic ability; it was just his ability to just everything. And he just lives his life like that. And having him around the kids is just a credit to him, man. It's just his level-headedness is just what we need.
So 2003, you make the playoffs for a third straight year. Nothing new there. But then you start winning in the playoffs, because up until that point, you were making the playoffs, but you weren't collecting wins yet.
Right.
And you get your first win. Your second win, okay, so you got a district title. That's new territory. Then you get to go on the road and take Ubley football and put Ubley football on the map.
Yeah. That was
number one New Lothrop. That team, those fans, they were all talking about going to Ford Field. They were number one. They were killing everybody that year. And they ran.
We laid the smack down, and I can't quantify victory, especially coming off a season. It's hard to digest and put it all into perspective until you get away. But I'm going to tell you, I can honestly say, if I look at this from a year from now, that was the most satisfying victory that we ever had. There's other victories that were bigger than that, but when we went there and to watch our kids, we heard, we watched them on tape. Jim and I watched them on tape, Becker, and it's just like, what are we going to do? And as a young coach, you're still finding your way. Well, nowadays I'd say, well, what are we going to do? We're going to just physically beat the snot out of them. That's what we're going to do. But I wasn't there yet. I hadn't had that kind of success to understand what truly would be the keys to success. I was a young guy, young coach, and for us to just go over there and, they had given up, 60 yards a game. And we went over there and got 60 yards in the first 4 plays, and that's all we played, that mantra that we're, they're better than us, they more physical, athletic, but we're tougher than them. And to go over, and what we did was just thoroughly just decimate them. And I can just remember how cocky I felt just watching our guys. And then you look back on it, that was the most fun game, and it was the most validating game from the standpoint that our style of football could compete at a very high level throughout the state of Michigan. I mean, that's what that was. And you're right. I mean, I might have put it on the map for everybody else, but it put Ubly football on the map for, I know, us and me especially, that I know what we need to do to be successful.
You know what you had a lot of people around the state trying to pronounce Ubly.
Yeah,
correctly
yeah.
After you beat New Loker.
You're
A lot of people
absolutely
say
right.
Ubly,
Yeah.
and not knowing how to.
Say it. Yeah, and they know it. They know what it's called now for sure. So.
Now, the game afterwards. I mean, that could have been a state championship game.
Oh yeah.
But here we are. Game afterwards. We're in Elma, facing Traverse City St. Francis. The cream of the crop at that time.
Yep. They ended up.
14-0.
Yeah.
You guys are up at halftime. What are you thinking?
Well, we went in. We felt fairly confident going into the game, and then they turned the ball over a couple times, and we played flawless. I mean, we couldn't have played any better. But we got in at halftime, and the guys will just tell you, and they'll still tell you this day, we were physically just exhausted. I think we could have held on. They returned the opening kickoff of the second half and scored, and it was very difficult for us to hold on, and they got some momentum. But it was kind of when you walked out of there and knowing how close you were, and of course, now you look back at it. Back then you just walked off, and you're just so proud of the kids. And now you look back at it, and years later, and said, man, we were that close. Because we'd have won the game the next week.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And we were just that close, man, and for those guys. But it's the funny thing, when you're in it, all the disappointment, you watch the films after you're disappointed, and as time goes away, it's just all those memories of those guys. But I can remember guys just so physically exhausted at halftime, and that's when you play the big, strong parochial schools, and that's when I really learned that's their advantage. It's just the waves of athletes are coming at you and playing one way, and how hard our kids got to work, but we got better at playing those teams as time went on, for sure.
So are you thinking at that point, 2003, first year, we went to the state semifinals. It's going to be like this every year. But it wasn't.
No.
You did continue to win games. I don't know if you're aware. You probably are aware of this. You've never been a one and done in the playoffs.
Yeah, we've won a game in the playoffs every year.
Won a game in the playoffs every year that you coach.
Yeah.
That's got to be something that you're very proud of.
I'm very proud of it. I mean, really, having that success, and then following 2000, I learned more as a coach in 2004 than I did any other year because first of all, the pressure, everybody thought we were going to be really, really good, and we thought we were going to be really, really good, and then it started really, really bad, and we weren't in shape, and we were simply not very well coached. And I learned a lot about getting the press clippings out of your head and worrying about focusing on today. I mean, that was the year that and at the end of it, we played, you could ask Tim Travis and Gary Van Sumeren, who were honestly, of the guys I've coached against, I mean, Gary Van Sumeren has been the guy that was my barometer. This guy I had the most respect for. I got along with him really good. We coached track against each other. But starting that year, we were so out of shape, not ready to play. And by the end of the year, we played those guys tooth and nail. That was the best team that's played in the thumb probably since the '81 Elkton Pigeon Bayport Lakers. I mean, and we lost 20-0. They scored with like 20 seconds left. It was really a 14-0 ball game the whole game, and I was really, really proud of those guys. And they were great football players. But what they gave me the most was that was my biggest learning curve as a coach. That you don't take anything for granted, man. We're not worried about November football if it's August 20th. We have got to worry about August 20th and get us. And I feel like ever since that point, we were never out of shape. We were always prepared. We took nothing for granted. We didn't have a lot of letdowns, and I learned all that as a coach. So that success in 2003 carried over in 2004 to really give me some serious humble pie is what it did. Mm-hmm. And that's when I truly learned what it takes to be a varsity coach.
Do you believe that 03, 04, you learned those lessons and really instituted those for that 08 season then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you learn more from your failures, man. I mean, if you aren't learning from your failures, and I tell kids that all the time, the number one teacher is life. and if you fail, and if you're willing to sit down and look in the mirror and see, I did this wrong, what do I got to change it? And that was probably, my lack of confidence. I was constantly looking, but yes, they set the framework for my coaching career, and I was so lucky to have such a great bunch of guys that we were still successful during that. I could have been somewhere where, I didn't have a bunch of guys, and I would have never learned that. But your feet were to the fire. You're good, and your failures are magnified, and the stress of it all, when you're good, and you have to learn. It can't be, the kids aren't doing this. No, and any coach ever tells me, well, kid can't do this, and you better find out what they can do. Because you gotta, and those 2 years, yes, absolutely, did more for me as learning curve was just off the charts.
So skip ahead to 2008. You knew you had a good team. Did you know it was that good going in?
Yeah, we had some good players. We went to the scrimmage. I knew we were pretty good, and the scrimmage was just like, my God, we got some studs, and it's funny because not only, we had a semifinal in 2006, and Jordan Kaufman and Mitchell Cleary and Eric LeBoon were all on that team, right? And they were sophomores. And you just saw Jordan. We brought Jordan up as a freshman and just played lights out. So we had they were seasoned, And then 2007, we weren't very, we had a great year. We lost in the second round of the playoffs, but it wasn't what they wanted. And the work ethic of those guys, and then to just see all the guys that went with these super athletes, Jordan, Eric LeBoon, but then you had guys like Brandon Lemke, and then you had Eric Booms as a sophomore, as a stud, Dalton O'Connor, and all these guys, and John Walker, and all these guys that filled those roles with them. I really, truly, that was the 1 year that I honestly thought going into the season we could make state finals. That was the only year I could say that. But learning from 2004, you just put that out of your mind. You knew what you had, but man, we got to stay. We got to stay in the moment. You know what I'm saying? And if I wouldn't have learned that, it could have been a lot different story.
Tell me about that 2008 run. Unbelievable run. You guys, up until that state championship game, were barely challenged.
Yeah,
by anybody.
It was stressful because you knew you're going to be good. So during the season, I never relaxed, to really enjoy it during the season. But man, you'd sit at practice sometimes and say, geez Louise, this is like pushing buttons with these guys. I mean, I just feel like I'm running a machine. You know what I'm saying? But you're still in the playoffs, and we had to beat Royal Oak Shrine, which was fantastic. If you remember that year, I think
terrible weather game.
Oh, it was a terrible weather game, but we played 3 undefeated opponents, in a row, and I don't know if I think it was the district final, regional final, semifinal. We're all undefeated opponents. And that was the best Team Shrine had that I could ever remember. And yeah, the weather was terrible. Jordan just took the game over. I mean, but the other kids played. Him and Eric Boone took the game over. And you had Stephen Weber. I mean, our other end, 6'6", 225 pounds, who was a great athlete. It was a magical year, and you wish that you could have done like this year, where I kind of took a moment and just was enjoying it, because I never really did that. You're just in such a grind. And Herb always said that, man. Coaching when you're successful is the hardest thing. When the expectations are high, and your personal expectations are high, it's just a grind. But then you look back at it, it was just, it was unbelievable. It really was.
That year, that's what happens when you put athletes like Jordan Kaufman and Eric LeBoon into this offense.
Oh, absolutely.
It was the wing T functioning at its highest
level. Oh, yeah. It was pick your poison. It really was. And even in the finals, I think we ran for over 300 yards. We ran into an absolute buzzsaw, but we were tough to stop, but it was we had great players, but it was still that technique-oriented, tough-minded. We're going to out-block our opponents. We're going to out-tackle our opponents. and we had guys that just bought in, and it was just magical to I don't know. We scored over 600 points.
629, I believe.
629,
which I believe is still the thumb record for points.
Yeah, I mean it was just nuts. I mean it was like it's wow. It was just wow. You know, how do you have those kind of kids?
Speaking of wow, so a lot of coaches, a lot of players, they'll go their whole careers and never get that opportunity to see those bright lights of Ford Field.
Yeah,
You guys got to see it, and you got to experience it. Now, you didn't get to win, but as time goes on, you don't remember the wins and losses as much as you.
What I wanted the kids, I wanted every kid to experience this because I experienced it once in my life. One time in my life, and that is it. But and I don't know what it would be like to be a professional athlete or college athlete, but walking out of that tunnel and hearing that roar of that crowd, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I wish our kids this year, even if we went down there, whatever would have happened, just to walk out of that tunnel as a team and just hear that roar. That's what I remember the most of that whole experience was. I mean, it was such a whirlwind, but just to watch that whole village of Ubley up there, man. You talk about just the immense amount of pride, and just hear that roar to go out there, and whether we won or I've never been, whether I had a state championship or man, I think you got to coach it. If you're worried about that stuff, you better coach at Orchard Lake St. Mary's or Birmingham, Rice. You better really appreciate the chances you get, and just to have that. And man, that's the one thing I wanted our kids to experience was just walk through that tunnel. I would have given up another week of practice or whatever else just to have that. And we came close a few times, but just experience it once.
You still get the goosebumps?
Absolutely, coming through that tunnel. That was just. It's just in your brain, Paul. I mean, you've done it as a reporter, but bringing your kids out through that and to hear that, unbelievable.
So when you mention Ubley football, two teams come to mind: Harbor Beach automatically, and the other one. Now they've moved on, Deckerville.
Oh yeah.
Your career record against Deckerville, 8-2, 8-2 against the Hall of Famer in Bill Brown.
Right.
6-5 against the future Hall of Famer in Troy Shelkey, and you walked off on your last game ever against Troy.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that one in a second. But just that rivalry, it means the same to, I think, all three of those schools.
Thumb football is missing those rivalries. I mean, this area, the Ubley-Deckerville rivalry, going up against them, and that triumvirate of Harbor Beach, Deckerville, and Ubley. I mean, that was, for years, thumb football at its best. I mean, it always meant something. You always knew it was going to be a good game. You knew all the teams were going to be supremely coached. I mean, I got a tremendous respect for Bill Brown, tremendous amount of respect for Troy and their teams, and I throw USA in the mix too. I mean, I've always thought, when I think of, it's those four teams that in my mind as a coach were our rivals. And losing Deckerville was just, it kind of stunk from just a fan perspective, to lose that rivalry.
Because we have a generation
that doesn't even know it. I mean, they don't understand how big that was. Man, I remember we beat them over there in 2005 in the playoffs after we got dusted. And I said that was the most validating win we ever had because we knew we were programmed. And then the following year, they beat us by a point out here in the last second to win the league championship. They threw the ball on 3rd down and 12 and caught it. And that was after the big Viddy kid returned a punt to the 30, late in the game. I mean, just wins and losses. It was just they were just great ball games. They were hard-hitting affairs. And, to be a part of that, when I grew up, it was the Jerry Hurts, the Jack Dillons, the Bill McClellans. Yeah. Those were the things. And then when you're in the midst of that, playing those types of games against your generation's best teams, and doing it year after year, and then you make the playoffs, oh, geez, you get to play them again. You know what I'm saying? And it just, that was so fun. And that's why I hope Ubley never gets rid of USA Game 1. I hope that for the next foreseeable future, at least, that Harbor Beach and Ubley are playing 11-man football, because those are the games that you remember. I tell you what, I don't know how many times I've played Mayville or teams like that. And no offense to Mayville, but I don't remember anything about those games. But those rivalry games, you always remember.
What kind of relationships do you have with Bill Brown and Troy?
I've always had a real good relationship. I've always thought Troy's a really funny guy. He cracks me up. And Bill, I've had a tremendous amount of respect. We've done a lot of hanging out over the years at coaching clinics and stuff. But there was always a vast amount of respect between all the programs. I mean, people think you hate these guys, man. And geez Louise, you go to a coaching clinic or something. Those are the only guys that know what you're going through. It's like a fraternity of guys. I can't really think of anybody that I coached against that I disliked or at all. And those guys were like the bar. I mean, they were the bar, and like I said, Tim and Gary over there, man, they were the bar. You're trying to chase, and then when you got it up to that level and to play those games, when you walked off and you shook each other's hands, you knew there was a lot of respect between both programs.
So we talked about 08, 09, 2010, 13-1, 12-1, 11-1. You guys went on a 32-game winning streak that you won, and probably added 2 more.
Right.
34 regular season game winning streak, 32 of which you were a part of. You couldn't see something like that coming, but it kind of took off.
It just
and Hubley was just, for that 3-year stretch, you guys were the standard of the entire club.
The kids really got a taste, I think. We had some really talented kids. Even when Jordan and those guys and Eric left, you still had Eric Booms and that class behind him with Justin Cleary and Stephen Weber and the rest of those guys that I'd mentioned before, along with others, were still really good players, and they had got a taste of it. And the other thing is, when you're giving those long runs in the playoffs, you're getting a season and a half. You're gonna, those guys are seniors, but geez Louise, they're like 6-year seniors. They played that many games, so you got into any type of game, and those guys were so seasoned to handle. I remember going down and we were down 3 touchdowns in the first 6 minutes against Sandusky in 2010, and I remember being on the sidelines and just this weight came off my. It was just like, that's what I felt, was this weight came off my shoulders, and we come back and won the ball game, and it was just we just kept doing what we do, and the kids were, like, guys, man, we got to quit turning the ball over, we got to start tackling. It was all the stuff they've been taught to come back and win that game, and we wouldn't even be talking about that streak without that game. But those were just some great kids. They got a taste. They got a taste of it. Eric Booms was just a phenomenal player, and he played all the way through that streak. Stephen Gilbert. I mean, geez, I could just go down the line of the guys that played. It was a culmination of having some talent and having some seasoned kids that knew what it took to win, and they didn't want it to end. It was like that.
2010, you lose to Ravenna, regional, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Did you know it was going to be your last game?
Yeah, I did.
How many people knew?
Probably Dave Kaufman. That was about it.
Now, why did you know that was going to be your last game?
Just because
nobody else knew.
The horse had been ridden. Man, I was at home. My daughter just graduated. I had 3 little boys at home that were in my house most of the time. I was a single dad. And trying to find that balance between this and what really started to stress me out, and really, I coached angry that last year. I just, it was just, for me, it was just too much. I mean, I was just, and I can remember the first game, we were playing at USA, and we had a kid make a mistake, and I remember turning to Dave, and I said, and it was right in the first quarter, I said, what am I doing this for? And I really said that. I said, what, and it was just time. I mean, it was just so much. I mean, you're playing those kind of games. You're playing, you're not playing a 9-game schedule. You're playing a 13, 14-game schedule every game, and then you're going home and you're coaching Little League. You're doing all the things you're supposed to do with your own kids, and this, that, and the next thing. And I just knew, and I tried. I said, when the season was over, I said, well, I'll wait till after the holidays. I'm not going to just make a rash decision. I'm going to wait till the end of the holidays. And then we got into lifting weights, and I just knew. I just said, but I had told Dave, who was, been my confidant, pretty much my coach, and him and Chuck have been my coaching confidants, the guys that I've, really share my thoughts when it comes to coaching. I had told probably, and I probably told Chuck too, but I knew that, and I said it was just the horse has been ridden, and something was going to break, and what was breaking was me coaching football.
Right. So you walk away.
Mm-hmm. I went to coach Pee Wee for 2 years.
Pretty darn good career. And you would have been content with that, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would definitely been content.
2019, almost a decade later. You're back on the sideline. How, did you ever think that you would be doing this again here?
Not as a varsity head coach. No, I didn't see that coming at all. I came back. I took 2 years, and I coached Pee Wees, and then I helped Dave out. And I really enjoyed that. I helped Dave out, and then it's funny because that, and I said that at the banquet last night. But the two most fortunate things I've had is, number one, spending the time I did around Jerry Hurt, and number two is having this core group of guys that started out with me when I was the head coach. And we went all the way up together. And I've always had, I would say honestly that anywhere in the area would be so envious to have the guys that I have on the sidelines helping me. And we've done it, and each one of us done it in every capacity, and I was helping him out. And man, I tell you what, the most fun run I ever had, all the playoffs runs, was 2016, because I was sitting back, I'm a dad. And I'm coaching JV. I'm up in the tower, man, and I'm running around like, I didn't really have a lot of pressure. I'm just helping out. Need me to help out with the tackles and ends, I'd help out with them. And I run around like a kid at Christmas, man. I was so excited. I enjoyed so much of it, and I just never wanted to get into that situation. And then, 2018 comes up, and I'm totally done. I mean, I was done. Jim was coaching, and then he had to make some changes and asked me to come back and coach the offense. I came back last year and coached the offense, and then he had health problems, and it all came full circle. I'll tell you, interestingly enough, when I was going to give it up in 2010, Dave always said, man, we got to make it through Casey. We got to make it through Casey. And we laugh about it because, if we can just make it through Casey, we'll be fine. And the way we made it is just... it's like a maze, but we made it. We made it. And it's funny that it all reverted back. Dave was doing it, and I was in his role. Him and Chuck were doing it, and I was now. It just came full circle, and they're back in the role I was in, and they were in before. And then, but no, I never, ever, ever, ever thought in my wildest dreams I'd be a varsity head coach again. And I don't regret it one bit, though. I mean, I don't.
You said it this year was different because you knew the finality of it all. You knew you were done. People tried to talk you into coming back during the season, but you made up your mind and you were committed to that. And the finality allowed you to enjoy this probably more than any other season.
It's not even close. I said the only year that probably I enjoyed more, I didn't enjoy more. There's no question. But could compare was 2005 when we made the playoffs, won a game in the playoffs. We had no business, and we had no expectations, and the kids just kept winning close game after close game. And it was so fun because the kids were, every time we wrote them out for that, they'd win another game. They were just a great bunch. Nick Lakewood and that crew, But this year, yeah, absolutely. When you go with the mindset that that this is it, and, you're only going to go walking out from this school to those lights X amount of more times. This is going to, like that even, I took that in when we won that game, when we played Brown City the last game. I said, this is the last time I'll get to watch those kids run over that. And that's just cool, kids go running out over the bridge and then into the lights. And then I got that, I figured, well, that was the last time that's going to happen. Brown City was our last game. And then we got the New Val game,
Yeah.
And, I took it all in. I mean, it was still stressful and stuff, but as far as really staying in the moment at the games, just taking it all in, just the kids, the timeouts, the kids in the huddle, kids getting excited, and the crowd. I mean, it was just, I really took it all in. It was fun. It really was.
Is Casey the only son that you coached as a head coach?
Nick was up with us for a little bit as a sophomore and played some valuable minutes as a sophomore when we lost to Ravenna. Then Anthony, I coached him at Pee Wees and that was it. And he was on the varsity all 4 years. And then Casey, prior to last year, I coached him maybe a game or two on the JVs, but I never wanted to coach my boys. I just didn't. I coached them all through little. I did all the dad stuff. That's people say that. Man, don't you? I said, geez, Louise, man, I coached track for 15 years. I coached little league for 20. You coach football for 28. That's a lot of coaching. And would I trade coaching Casey for anything? Now that I did it and really committed to it, no, I would trade it. It was awesome.
You're hard on him.
Oh, I'm very hard on him. Oh yeah.
Maybe harder than anybody else.
Oh yeah. I mean,
but
you
don't take it home either. Right?
No, we do not take it home. Home is our sanctuary. I'm dad at home, and I'm coach here, and whatever happens here, and it's always been my rule is that you go home, your dad, you're here, you're a teacher and coach. I don't expect them to call you Mr. Sweeney, but
coaches.
I expect them. It's the only way. You hear it all the time. Oh, he plays because he's the coach's kid. I never wanted my kids to go through that, and I never wanted other people to feel that way. And invariably, you're going to have people that feel that way, but I guarantee you, the kids that are on the team with them don't feel that way because they're getting their butt chewed all the time. Because ultimately, if it's your son, it's their high school experience too, right? I lived my high school days, played football, loved it, every minute of it. They deserve that too.
This season, there's no way you could have predicted it'd be 10-3, 1 point from qualifying for a state championship game. How did this all come about?
Just kids buying in and believing, and I said at the banquet last night, man, there is not, I've talked to so many banquets, and I probably can count on one hand the number of times you get up there and you don't have to lie about at least 1 or 2 kids. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You got to find something nice to say. But honestly, this group, there's not one malcontent on the entire group, and they're totally focused. And totally focused. When we got to the playoffs, they've been the most unfocused group of kids. If you ask anybody, any of the teachers here, those goofballs, but you know what every one of them's going to say? Man, when they were freshmen, they were doofuses. But they have really they're just a nice group of guys. They're a good group of guys. And to see them grow, and, I've watched them here all, it's just from being around them since they're this tall, they're all a bunch of scrawny little rugrats is what they were. And just for them to gel like that, but man, when they hit the playoffs, it was just, I've said that to you before, but it was just where they got this laser focus, I don't know. But it was just laser focus at practice. Man, there wasn't any dead time at practice. They knew exactly, and the execution in the ball games was off the charts. I mean, I can go back to 2003 and 2008, and these guys may not be the athletes that we had then, but their execution was on that level, if not a little bit above that level, as far as how they executed offensively and defensively. And I can't think of a better group of guys to go out with. The better group for the kids that I've always loved coaching. Just kind of the underdog type kid, and just the tough nut. It was the perfect group to go out with. It really was for me. I mean, it was just. It was so validated in so many ways.
You've coached hundreds of games. I've covered hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of games, and I forget more than I remember. But I remember 2003 New Lothrop, and I will never, ever, ever forget 2019 district championship at Harbor Beach. the parallels of 2003 to 2019, it was a highly ranked team, expected to make a long run.
And it's your rival. They haven't beaten 5 times in a row. You know.
Take me through this game. I mean, it was the perfect story.
It was. You talk about parallels. You know, I thought we could beat them. In my mind, I thought we could beat them. In my mind, I thought, man, our game plan's good and stuff, but can our kids really beat these guys? That's really what you're thinking. Can our kids? And it was our kids that decided on their own to go over there. And they weren't walking off there losing. And it was just the way they played that game. It was just amazing. I mean, you know, and I'm constantly on the kids, man. It's we're going to try to put you in the right spots, man. And my coaching is Monday through Thursday, you know. And Fridays, that's your show, man. I'm going to call the plays and this, that, but that's your show. Players win games. And, yeah, I thought game plan-wise is good, this, that, and next thing, but can our kids really beat them? They're so talented. They're so much bigger than us. You know, that's what you're thinking in your head. And to watch our kids go over there, and it was just so great to watch a group of kids not be denied. And just everything that they did, they were so disciplined. They were so physical. You know, it was just every adjective that you could use and superlative you could use on that performance. You know, it was just it was awe-inspiring. Again, you don't want to say most or what, but I've never been more proud of a bunch of kids, you know, than I was that night.
I'm not sure if you had an out-of-body experience or not. You've seen the pictures they've floated around of after the game. Tell me about that. It was a pure release for you.
Oh, it was just a total release because I was so proud of those kids, so excited. It was just like, yeah. I very seldom ever act out after a win or a loss. I mean, it is what it is. But man, you get a few moments where it's just like, man, you're so excited for those kids, man. And I just, you know, and the way they performed, and then just for the whole community back there, you know, and to just witness that, you know, that's our kids. So I said it's the beauty of thumb football, you know, where other places in the state probably can't see it, maybe up north in some other rural areas, but those are all ugly kids, and that's all Harbor Beach kids. You know, we're not getting transfers. There's not a lot of athletes coming from outside the area to transfer in, and just that release was just like, man, you get that victory. I mean, it just consumed me. I mean, I was so pumped. I was so pumped for them, man. Man, I tell you what, I walked around like a zombie for 3 days after that, and I was sore from jumping around, man.
And that game earned you your final home game.
Yeah.
To where you thought when you played Brown City, okay, this is it. You took it all in, but you got one more, and it was for a regional championship against Saginaw New Bell, and beat them by 20 to go off here as your final home game with a regional championship. What a way to end a home career here. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was honestly, you know, my reaction after the game was not anything like the Harbor, because everything after the Harbor Beach game was just, you know, it was great. But if you're in the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen. You know, you don't know what your draws are going to be. You might get great draws, you might get lousy draws. We actually, I thought, got pretty tough draws. I mean, it's tough to play out of an all-thumb district, you know, at the Division 8 level. But to get that home game, I never, ever, 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 ever in a million years expected to get that. And I really took a lot in that game. I mean, I really did. Like I said, the walk out to the tunnel, all the pregame stuff, you know, all that stuff that you know, you just aren't going to do anymore. The national anthem's another one. I mean, it's just, you know, that anticipation of the kickoff, and then to go out and win in a completely different fashion than we did the night before, you know, or the week before. And it was just awesome. I mean, it was just cool to get one more game out. You know, it's a lot different between playing Game 7 at home on an October night against Brown City, and there's nobody there, as they have in that last home game be a regional championship. You know, that's awesome. Against Saginaw New Bell. That is awesome.
Legacy. I know it's probably a word you don't even want to talk about, but there is a legacy that you leave behind here. We talked about it at the beginning. Your record, the districts, the regionals, the state runner-up, all the lives that you've touched. Your coaches, your players. What do you want to be remembered for?
It's a hard question to answer, to be honest with you, because you just, you're still in the prime of your life. I cared. I brought, when I coached, and as people wonder, I said, I bring, you don't realize it just kills me the amount of energy that I expend, and I only know how to coach one way, and that's if you want kids to play intense, you've got to be intense, and that's not, the older you get and the more content you get, that's tough to do. And I just hope that, the kids that played for me realize that, I did the best I could, and that my legacy is them. It's those guys, the pride they get, and if they got anything out of playing in the program, that's all I need, that I gave them my best, and I know they gave me their best, and I guess my legacy is the guys that I coach. And I hope that they know that I gave them their best, or gave them my best, and I know that they gave me their best.
The future for you now, new wife, new baby.
Yep.
Lead singer, you're a rock and roll, you're a rock and roll superstar. Well, football didn't define your life.
Nope.
By any means. It was a part of your life, a big part of your life, but it wasn't your entire life. So what's the future now? Tell me about the wife and the new baby and
first
and
of all,
the band.
The first of all, we've got, for the first time in our lives, and I told my wife we're going to go on about a 2 to 3 week trip this summer that I wanted to do because I love to go places and do things like that. I plan on, spending as much time with her and the baby and the rest of my kids. We're a pretty tight-knit bunch. We do quite a bit together, and I plan on keeping on with the band. I love doing that. It's awesome doing it with Mark and Steven. It's great to have a kid that I coached, and now he kind of leads me. It's pretty neat. And that we got a place up north. Frankly, when you're coaching, we hardly got to enjoy it at all this year because you're got to be home for the weights during the week, and then you got gigs on the weekends, and I just absolutely love it up there. So there's just so much I want to do. I've got my dogs. And I that's never been a problem. I'll run them all winter long, and but it's just time. It was funny because I talked to my brother at Thanksgiving, and we talked about, well, I'll help, and he goes, no, you just need to be done. You just need to be done and go and just do the things. And I've said it's time to be the Fred Flintstone. When the whistle goes off, I'm sliding down and going home. It's just so much time, and like I said, it's not just the football. It's the football. It's coaching track. It's coaching Little League all those years, and it's just time to scale it back and start doing a lot more things and spending more time, doing things that we can do as a family and enjoy. Like I said, I am so stoked about this trip this summer that my wife and we haven't even planned it yet, but we've just been talking about it. And we're going to make it happen because that's the stuff that's all took a back seat. We used to have a week window. It was spring break. That was the only, and I'd always take the kids somewhere. But now I've got the summer to do it, that type of thing. So without Little League and without everything else that goes on.
Finally, are you glad, though, that you had this opportunity with your wife, with your new baby, to go through this one more time with them? They know they were able to experience this with you where they weren't the original.
Absolutely. She got to see what, and people always used to ask me, would you coach somewhere else? And every once in a while somebody say, you come coach here? I said, I would never coach anywhere other than Ubley. I love Ubley, and a big part of Ubley to me is Ubley football. It's just, it's the pride factor, being part of that, and the guys that you had, and she never had experienced that. I could talk about it till I was blue in the face. She'd never experienced it, but she got to experience it this year. She got to experience it, and she gets it, you know. So whenever I talk about all the stuff, you know, she gets it. For her to experience this, I think she gets how much it entails being a football coach, number one, a varsity football coach, and number two, she got to experience this magnificent thing that's been in my life for years, ugly football, you know, and it means a lot. It was, like I said, this year was so validating in so many ways, and that's just another way it was validating, you know.